Elimination, gliding through actions in soft syncopation. Oh, yeah, it's direct elimination.
Well, Stephen,
Well, Ari.
for those of you who don't know, this is round 2 of trying this because I wasn't recording the first time around. So, in our studio today, we have, with 6 months of active fencing experience, retired, and currently 19 years of fencing parent experience, and a much longer CV, triple board certified in neurology, sleep, epilepsy, a Stanford Sleep Fellow back in the day, former UCLA Sleep Disorders Center co-director, and even has a physical exam maneuver named after him, the Simmons chin press and tongue curl for screening sleep apnea. Founder of an educational nonprofit, the Sleep Education Consortium. Founder and CEO of the Comprehensive Sleep Medicine Associates Practice. And my father, Jerry Simmons. Woo! All right. Second time. Welcome to Direct Elimination.
Oh, it's my honor to be here. Thank you.
This is where the last interview cut off, so we're back to where we were. Hit us with it, Stephen.
Welcome to the show.
Pleasure. Thank you.
We're very, very excited to have you. We're hoping for your insights as well as your insights on your lovely son here. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun talking about some stories today. But I guess we'll just get into it, I guess. So
Yeah, let's start where all stories start.
from the beginning.
Beginning.
So never mind. So what was the decision like to get Ari into fencing? What was that process from your perspective? We've heard his perspective. We're excited to hear, the decision making that led to it.
Well, it was Ari's decision. Ari was into gymnastics and actively involved in that. And then his best friend, Anton, was fencing, and his stepfather, Andre, had a club. It was in its infancy, and Ari went to one of Anton's tournaments and came home and said, "I want to quit gymnastics. I want to start doing fencing." And so we're like, fencing? This is like coming from left field, and basically, it was more of a commitment for your mother, for Irina. She had to, drive. And so she looked over to Camille and said, "Camille, you're going to do fencing too." And so at first it seemed like a fad, which obviously turned out to be a life transformational process.
It's not a phase, Dad.
But it started off as a phase.
Yeah.
And so initially, it was just like any other typical scenario where a child's involved in sports, and you go to the events and you start meeting the parents, and you don't really think too much of it in terms of where it's going to go. I thought it was interesting. There's all this equipment, and then I started learning more about the sport itself, and I recognized that there is a whole social network involved. You start hearing the stories. So, but at first, to answer your question, from my perspective, it really just seemed like just another phase, another process of a child growing up, and you want to be supportive and say, fine, and I think Ari was thinking about doing football also in the back of his head. But so his mother said, it's not football, so I'm supportive.
That's awesome.
She really didn't want me to play football.
Would have been a weapon.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I actually, from my perspective, I don't remember being the initiator of switching to fencing. So there's only one way. I think we got Camille's perspective, my perspective, yours. We're going to have Mom on at some point and get her perspective, because I think I was pushed in that direction. But if I was called to it, that's even better. Then it was really meant to be.
Well, you were, I think, very impressed by the whole dynamic of the fencing tournament and all the excitement. And you came back from that tournament and said, I want to do fencing. So
That's awesome. I remember Anton was fencing foil at the time.
Oh, yeah?
Guess who beat him at that tournament?
Who?
Raymond Chen.
That checks
The
out.
Y10 men's foil. Anyways.
So, quick aside, where did your 6 months of fencing, active fencing, fit into that journey?
interesting. So as time went on, it was several years later, Andre was getting more creative in his way of trying to build more momentum. And the parents would drive and bring the kids there. And so on Saturdays, he started having an adult fencing activity for beginners. And it was funny because we would, take some lessons and then we'd fence each other. And then we'd sit down and have wine and cheese. And the wine and cheese afterwards, that was the best part. Always walked away with a smile on our face, even if I got beat up a little bit. So I became more interested and started fencing. And then there was going to be, this was, I guess, back in 2010, I think, because there was going to be a summer camp or a outing where we'd go for 2 weeks to Israel. And so Irina and we were chaperones. And there were about 20 to 25 kids, several of the parents. We went along and went on a fencing retreat or what have you for 2 weeks. And we would be going to these different fencing clubs traveling around Israel. So the idea is the parents that wanted to fence could fence too. So I'm like, okay, that's what I'll do. And so I was gearing up for that and preparing for my fencing debut. And I remember I was really good at breaking blades.
He beat Anna Van Brumen's blade so hard it just snapped.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a dream we all have.
Well, speaking of Anna Van Brumen, so one time I show up, this is after we came back from our travels, and there was an internal club tournament. And it's like, Jerry, fence Anna. And so she was like maybe, I don't know, 15, 16 at the time. I already won like national championships, and I'm fencing this, champion young girl, and she's beating me really bad. And so finally I tried to do a lunge, and all of a sudden my back went, snapped. And I think that was the end of my fencing career.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, the game misses you. You got to come back.
Hasn't been the same ever since,
hasn't
to be
been
honest.
the same ever since. That's funny.
That's awesome.
So I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. It's going off of this, we're somehow maintaining good chronological order in the way the story is going, but we ask everybody that comes onto our show about an all-in moment, and we're curious about your recognition moment of when this had become more than just a sport, when this was all of a sudden, not an after-school activity. This is going to be something more serious. And what was that, A, moment, if you remember it? B, what was that like for you as a parent to realize, okay, this isn't just a little hobby. This is something that is going to not only be taken more seriously, but I'm probably going to have to spend a lot more money and time on this former just after-school activity for my kid.
Well, back in, I think it was 2012 maybe. No, it was earlier than that. I don't remember the exact year. But you and I had gone skiing up in Lake Tahoe.
That was 2011.
2011. And then
Encyclopedia's back on.
And you were skiing, and then you didn't want to ski, you wanted to snowboard rather. And so we were snowboarding, and you flipped and you hit yourself in the back, and then you were done with the mountain. We ended up spending the rest of the weekend in the hotel watching movies and eating pizza and enjoying ourselves. But then we got back. you were rather than going into all the details, the bottom line is you had a congenital ureter issue in your kidney, and you had to have surgery, and that meant you were going to be out for most of the season, and you were really upset about that. But then you had your surgery, and you started training, and you came back, and then we came back for summer nationals, which was in Nevada, in Reno that year, and lo and behold, there you were in the final match.
You remember who beat me?
Yeah, Justin. And it's like, but I was so proud. Like, you had come back and took second place at a time when you thought you were, out for the season. And I think that at that point, there was the fact that you made the finals and did that well. It became clear that this is something that you're good at, and it just, you're asking when was the all-in moment. I guess at that point, just feeling really proud of your accomplishments and wanting to be supportive to give you what you needed for this journey to take it to whatever extent you wanted to take it.
Oh, that's cool. Y14 Summer Nationals, baby.
I remember that Summer Nationals.
Yeah. How'd you do?
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I only fenced Y12.
Yeah. You were a baby then.
Yeah, I was still young.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that was the moment for you. I think we all go through a series of all-in moments throughout our lives, our journeys, our careers, and up until this point, I hadn't given that season much thought, but it's funny to think about, having come back from a series of injuries and situations since then. To think that the first one was actually earlier than I remember is pretty funny. And it's been a trend, coming back from injury to have, what can be considered a best result, or a relative personal best. Hopefully we're done with that part of the career. But as you see, this season is the exact same thing. We're coming off of my first
part of the career. It's been the whole career.
I know, clearly, but hopefully this last stretch is just me coming back from the surgeries. You know what I mean?
Well, years before that, I remember going to my first tournament out of town alone with without.
Yeah, do you remember where we went?
Yeah, it was outside of Boston, somewhere in Massachusetts.
Went to New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Yeah,
I remember we flew in. It was you, me, Camille, and I, and there was this big snowstorm, and we went to get the rental car, and I lost my phone in a big snow pile. Somehow it fell into the snow, and we couldn't find it, and I had two phones back then too, luckily.
Nice.
But it was the first time I actually started using GPS to get around and just following the line, all the traffic. But you were, how old do you think you were back then? They were like,
that was my last year of Y12, so I was 12 years old.
No, you were younger, I think, than that. Really?
I wouldn't put money on it if I was you. Trust me, I was 12 years old.
Okay.
Steven and I have played this game a lot of times.
He's pretty good at this game.
All right, I believe you. 12 years old, and so Camille was younger.
Maximum, I was it was the last year of Y12. You turned 13 that calendar year. That was January. I was Y12.
Well, I just remember being at that tournament in all the snow, and just starting to get to know the parents better from around the country.
Yeah, that's where I met Porter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, first Porter appearance.
In New Hampshire?
Yeah, Porter did really well in Y14, and then I beat him in Y12 in top 8 or something. This video is on the internet. It's hilarious.
Oh, is that
Put
the
it right
legendary
here.
video?
No, the legendary video is Justin Yu versus Anton Piskovatskov in Y12. That is legendary.
So Porter's mom had a camera
Yeah.
that was like the Sony kind, you could hold it like a gun. She's a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to her and seeing her camera. And then we ended up, I think we were into San Jose for Summer Nationals that summer. And while we were out there, I bought a similar camera.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So the next series of questions that we have are kind of geared towards, a large portion of our fencing audience is fencing, or of our audience for this podcast is fencing parents, right? And Ari and I were very excited to have you on because, we preach these things about how we observe parents treating young fencers now and beliefs that we hold about how this sort of support system should be and this interaction should be because it's something that we lived, right? So we're very excited to start getting your take on how you guided Ari through this process and Camille, and just sort of your takeaways from it and, what the mentality was to support it throughout and, hear more about your philosophy of support and just sort of how you guided Ari along this journey. But to narrow back in, sorry, the first one we have here is, fencing is an incredibly expensive sport. It's one of the most expensive out there. It's a financial burden on any family. What convinced you to invest that money in your kid's experience? And at any point, did you ever feel that it wasn't worth it, or did you ever question that?
So I remember the first time there was some kind of a social gathering and Andre's there, and Andre and I are just talking, and he starts telling me about the typical journey. Oh, in a couple of years, he'll start doing not just these national tournaments, he'll go internationally and he'll be traveling internationally. And the whole conversation with Andre became very intimidating. It's like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to be traveling all over the world. It's, and he said, but, if he does well, the colleges will like him and it'll be good for him. And so I didn't know to what degree Ari would take it, but I think this was probably shortly after he had won took second place in the Summer Nationals. It might have even been before that, but at first I was very intimidated. The process happens in stages because as you do more traveling just nationally, then the opportunity goes international, and when the opportunity is there, I didn't want to say no. I want to be supportive, and I think that there's two perspectives. One is, wow, isn't that really neat that my child has an opportunity to travel internationally, to go somewhere and to do something like that. The other perspective is, geez, how much money do I have to fork out to do this? When you look back, the money comes and goes. You're not going to remember, but it's these opportunities that really transform someone individually. So I was supportive of it. Now, I was fortunate that I was able to afford it. And there are a lot of kids that could not. So I think for the parents' perspective, if they can't afford to go with their child, at least to be able to find a parent that's responsible to maybe chaperone their child and give them what they need to be able to go, because you build on your opportunities and on your successes. And if you don't take these early steps, how are you ever going to get to the later ones? You don't just all of a sudden arrive. You have to build up that momentum. So hopefully that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. And then you had I think there was a second question.
Yeah, there was a second question there. Was there ever a moment or a season where you were like, I don't want to fork this out anymore. Like, it's not worth it. Whether that was from Ari.
No, no, I don't think so. I don't think there was a point where I said enough's enough. Yeah, there's clearly times where I've wondered from Ari's perspective after finishing college on his own, when he's going to these places, and he hasn't asked me for money. You haven't asked me for money for many years. I'm surprised.
I was waiting till right now. Can I have some money? And do you want to sponsor this podcast?
We got him right where we wanted.
There we go. Is that going to be a direct elimination?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always going to be supportive. You know that.
All right.
Fork it up.
So there was never a point though that I said, "Oh, it was a waste of money and I shouldn't have done that." I don't think so. There have been times though where I've said I should have gone to that tournament because if there's one thing I regret not doing is when we were traveling around the world and going to Europe. I mean, how many people go to France for a weekend? I mean, or go to Switzerland for a weekend. I would have try to carve out an extra day for travel, for sightseeing. I think that because there's always this pressure, you got to get back to work, got to get back to school. I mean, there's probably ways to have negotiated or figured out how to not have done that. And since you're traveling all the way to some destination overseas, it would have been worthwhile to have tried to do a little more travel, sightseeing.
I think that's a good take.
That is a great takeaway from it too, because now that you mention it, a little more sightseeing would have been nice. A little more of an experience in these places is always valuable, and especially now that Ari and I have both had seasons recently where we're not traveling as much, and that's the piece that I miss the most. Right? Obviously, the competition is what keeps us in the game, and it's why we love the game. But something about being able to go for a weekend to France or go for a weekend to Switzerland, like it's a really unique life. It's something that I'm very grateful for, and it's something I'll definitely miss in the future. So.
Yeah, that's why we're never quitting.
Exactly.
But we did carve out some time. Like I remember when you did your gap year, your first gap year, I took 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
And we went to a couple different
We did a
tournaments.
senior and then a junior back to back. Oh. And we stayed in Europe for that.
Which?
I saw you in Finland.
Yeah, I was thinking because I remember.
And then we went from there to Germany to train, and then I went to Bern right after.
That's cool.
So we just kind of did a little Euro trip. That was fun. And there were some really cool moments of that, and I personally also regret. I had opportunities. I remember the World Championships were in Moscow, and you and Mom stayed to go to St. Petersburg, and maybe Camille went too, or something, and I just wanted to get home. And I didn't have the foresight to understand that this is a beautiful opportunity to see a city that is going to be hard to get back to. And now with everything happening, I don't know if I'll ever go to St. Petersburg. And that's just one example, of a missed opportunity. But it is cool that you brought up all these points, and I think that the support has been felt by me. It was definitely felt by Camille. And something interesting that you brought up is that college got introduced into your consciousness of things you're aware of as a potential outcome at a pretty early time in the sport. You said Y14 or earlier. At home, speaking on myself, and my sister can definitely corroborate this story from her side, I never was talked to about college. I never was spoken to about needing to do well anywhere except in the classroom. And it wasn't even getting all A's. It was just do as best as I can. And with fencing, there was never a conversation about needing to do better so that I could get recruited. That was never, I can look you in the eyes and look you in the eyes and you can agree with me, right? We didn't have that conversation a single time. Oh. Until I was actually getting recruited, which was many years later, after I had won world championships and everything. And then it was just sort of like, oh, shoot, I guess I'm going to get into college for this thing. But it was just never a point of conversation. And my question to you is, was that a deliberate decision between you and my mom? Or was that like how there's so many issues that Stephen and I see today with parents having so much pressure on their kids to get those results and to perform right now because they have to get recruited and all these eyes are on them. And it detracts from the self-motivated journey that you and my upbringing facilitated for me.
Right. So we didn't look at fencing as, oh, this is a ticket to get you into a college. That wasn't, I mean, you were fencing because you wanted to fence, and we recognize how it's good to build character. So your performance at a particular tournament and how well you did we never got mad or, did any disciplinarian thing because you didn't do well. I think you felt the pain yourself that you didn't do well. So we wanted to be supportive there. I think it's the most important time for a parent is probably how do you deal with the failures? Because if a child is they could actually develop an aversion to the activity because, why even engage in it? Because if they don't succeed, they're going to have all those ramifications for the failure. And I wanted to give you the support, show you the love at your most difficult times. It's easy when you're doing well to sing your praise, but it's when you're not doing well saying, that's okay, tap on the shoulders, like, let's move on. But I would find sometimes you or Camille would not want to engage in any kind of discussion. You'd want to just sort of remove yourself like you're dealing with your own disappointment. So I would just be quiet on my own and just wait for you to re-engage into interacting. So, but it was never about you needed these results to get into school, and I mean, really, at first, there was no scholarship. Because we were talking about you going to UPenn and the Ivy League, and they don't have scholarships.
But even then, Ivy League is something that a lot of these parents are pushing for. They don't care about the scholarship necessarily. Right. It's you have to go to Harvard, you have to go to Princeton, you have to go to wherever. And it's like those doors are not just going to open because you're demanding your kid to do well.
Well, I was, okay, so at the time, we were talking about you going and getting a business degree, and you said, maybe Penn and Wharton. And I remember Coach Ma actually reached out for the first time to Wharton, saying he had a fencer that wanted to come on and wanted to go to Wharton. Was he able to get the school to help support, to bring for his acceptance, to help him recruit? And that worked out. Then Justin actually, he also came on board. But then, and there was no scholarship. But then during your gap year, as you were enjoying yourself with your fencing activities, you went to Notre Dame, visited some friends, interacted with the fencing club there, the
sure,
fencing
it was just
team.
fencing activities.
And then when you came back, you sat me down and said, Pop, what would you say if I told you I don't want to go to UPenn, but I'd rather go to Notre Dame? Would that be okay? And I'm like thinking, well, it's your call. If that's where you want to go, are you sure? This is a big decision because, I think I fit in better at Notre Dame. This is really, I just think it's the right move. And plus, they can scrounge up a 2-year scholarship. Now, they could have given me a 4-year scholarship. They actually told me about it, during my senior year. And I'm like, oh, really? I never knew about that. Apparently, they had discussed with you, possibly having a 4-year scholarship. But by then, they had already obligated the scholarship to other people. They could only scrounge together 2 years. And so, which was great as a savings, but it was where you wanted to go. So, and I remember when there was the difficult call to Coach Ma about not following through on the UPenn experience. But
glad it was funny for you. That's terrifying. That was like one of the first times I had to hold myself accountable to a decision I had made, realizing that I had dragged other people along with me. That was a hard call.
Right.
It was a good character building moment, I guess, but it was super challenging. It's like, oh, wow, I really had a lack of maturity in this moment, and now I'm reaping what I sow.
Well, I remember we did that call together. I think you did the talking, but I remember there was.
Yeah, it was tough. Anyways, so on that, I think you made some really good points. The supporting when people are losing. Did I ask the last question or did you?
You did.
Okay, we're bouncing actually back to Steven.
No,
but
it's okay.
I think that's really important because I felt that, and I think Camille felt that too. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform, and that manifested itself in plenty of different ways. There were outbursts, there was stuff like that from both myself and Camille, but a lot of that came from internalized pressure. And we knew you and Mom wanted us to do well, but we never felt that demand for output. It was always a demand on holding us to a high standard in our behavior, in our approach, being respectful, focusing, showing up when we say we're going to show up. But it was never, you have to win. You have to get an A on this. You have to get this result. You have to make this team. You have to go to this school. It was always pushing us, but to the right process rather than to an outcome. And I don't know if we necessarily could articulate that at the time, but it's something that's become a huge part of my philosophy. And Steven hears me yap about it all the time. Yeah.
Yap is good.
Yap is good.
So, sort of tying into that, when there were those tough moments, whether it was loss or maybe something different, maybe something in the training, like, what was that like for you internally when you'd see them dealing with a hard loss, right? Because I think part of you, you might want to play the coach there, right? Or you might want to open up your mouth and say, this is what I saw you did wrong, or maybe, you acted inappropriately in this moment. But it sounds like you had the restraint to not do that and to allow them to sort of go on this journey themselves.
Well, it's obviously very disappointing that when you travel all the way to some place, overseas or long distance, and you watch the very first bout, your child loses. It's all over. It's like, okay, now we'll twiddle our thumbs.
Let's say Estonia, I got cut. We went to Estonia, and I just got cut very quickly. It was a super fast pool. And I remember going 1-5 in record time. It was crazy.
It's like, oh my gosh, all this,
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was disappointing. But again, you balance that with the time where your child is gonna be take the championship in Croatia. So, but I do remember the first international competition in Vancouver. We went.
That was a senior World Cup.
First senior World Cup.
It was Bern. We went to Switzerland together. We went to Vancouver later, but
so it was in Bern, and then you made it to second day.
Yeah,
and you were going to be fencing a Russian fencer that was real experience, had been like in the Olympics and whatever. Yeah. And I remember, there was the first time you were making second day, and you were, I think, like one of the only Americans that.
I was the only American that made it.
Second day, and we're that night in the hotel, like trying to look up at the fencer, like to find out more what's he all about and what's his skill set. Are there any videos to watch?
Yeah, do you remember how that bout went?
He toasted you. But it was a lot of excitement just that he made it to the second day, and that was a lot of fun. But
did you have Sergey with you at that one?
No, it was just my dad.
That's got to be fun for you to sit there and play analyst and coach and play videos.
And at that time,
nutritionist.
For those of you that are listening, in 2014, fencing YouTube was a lot less fleshed out. Thanks to Cyrus of Chaos, we did have a handful of videos, but and there were other accounts posting, but the amount of resources that you have access to now relative to even when you were just 2 years behind, right? Like fencing YouTube, although when you started getting more
I was on fencing YouTube in 2014.
Yeah, exactly. But fencing YouTube, like they were not, the first world championships that was live streamed was 2012 in Moscow. And then 2013, this was 2014, there was just not that much, and people weren't clipping up these bouts from the live streams the way they are now.
2-hour, 8-hour chunks of video you had to scrub through.
Yeah, and then sometimes those live streams would go away, and it was just the infrastructure wasn't there. So I remember hunting for some of those videos, and maybe we should analyze them better, but it was really fun. And I remember none of my blades made it, so I was using Jimmy Moody and Dylan French's and Jason Pryor's worst blades. I think I had a French grip with me there. They're just like forked up. People were just like, here, take my worst one. And just got lucky, made it day 2. And then I got all my stuff, and I should have kept using their bad blades because it was 15. I think I got 6 touches. But it was a great experience.
Who was it, Anokian? Or?
No, it was Pavel Sukhov.
Oh, Sukhov?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, he welcomed me to the league, that's for sure. Yeah, thanks for going. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
So, interesting We're still doing well on time. I wanted to ask a question that Stephen and I had prepared. Is so we already kind of talked about a lot of the ups and downs, and you brought up that it's easy to tout the successes of your kid, and then it's harder and more important to be there in those challenging moments. So we touched on another question we're going to ask you there, but I'll give a quick story and then ask you a question. So I remember the first time we went to an international tournament together was in 2012 in France. Over Thanksgiving, we had a cadet international there. And it was my second time ever going to one to begin with. And I had only medaled at the cadet level in the U.S. twice. We didn't have SJCCs, any of that. We just had NACs. So I had medaled at the previous two NACs, basically. And it was like, oh, starting to get results. Now we're going internationally. And you asked me in the hotel room, do you know how to meditate? I was 15. I think I said, how the hell would I have learned how to meditate? No, I don't know how to meditate. And you taught me how to meditate in our hotel room. And I remember thinking it was really cool to feel your heart rate slow down and the world kind of fade away as you fixate on a mantra, and you feel present, but also completely removed. And it was the coolest feeling ever. And you said at the end of it, yeah, that was cool. This helps you focus. And I started using it. And that same season, I remember every single time that I really channeled in on that, I had a result. And then I was doing it, and I had two of the best results of my career. And I've been using it intermittently in my life since. The last couple of years I've been doing it regularly, religiously, but throughout college and whatnot, the end of my junior career was pretty intermittent. But that was a big skill that you had, given me, and a life skill that I feel that I learned at a young age. And that leads into the question of, this might be it, but I just wanted to share that story with you first, because that's something that I believe impacted me. And I want to know if you agree, if that was where you helped my career or Camille's career the most on that front. But if not, where do you think you helped our careers the most? And maybe where do you think you could have hurt them with good intentions?
Well, going back to the meditation aspect, I remember that trip and recognizing how learning how to do meditation when I was actually about your age, I was a little bit older than you were at the time when I first started meditating. That was very transformative in my own pursuit, ultimately professionally. Even my performance at school improved, and it really helped me by exercising the concentration and learning how to get more control over your autonomic nervous system can help performance. And I figured, let me see if I could pass this on to Ari. All right, we're together here. Maybe he'll be receptive. I already learned not to push something. If you say no, no, I may throw hints to convince you. But this, I was really impressed and happy that right away he said, sure. Can I teach you how to meditate? Sure. And so we sat there and I explained it, and so I probably had meditated 2 or 3 days then by the time the tournament came around, because I think that was like in the first day of our trip to France. And then you did well. You actually medaled in an international competition, and then we talked about it, and then that season was very transformative to your overall trajectory in fencing, because out of nowhere, all of a sudden you're getting amazing results, and you were a cadet, but you were even getting results on the junior level, and then there was junior with the Junior Olympics, and I wasn't able to make that tournament, and within my own medical practice, there was a lot going on, and we were moving into a new office, and I just wasn't able to make it, and I had someone giving me the blow-by-blow or touch-by-touch reporting of what was happening at the event. Since I wasn't there, they're giving it to me live, and lo and behold, you won, and you beat a fencer that was quite, I can't remember his name.
Alexander Eldib,
Yeah. And Eldib was
year
like
was
the
it?
guy to beat.
2013. This was right before Worlds. This was the first tournament I ever won.
Yeah. And that meant you're going to Croatia, that we're going to Croatia. And so at that point, it's like
For the World Championship.
for the World Championships. And that was out of nowhere. And I wasn't prepared. And that was going to be like about 3 or 4 weeks later, and I had to really roster things up and within work, just tell everyone, look, I'm leaving. I know this is a real tough time, but I have to go because your child isn't going to go to the World Championship and you don't show up as a parent. I mean, so we got it all together. We all went as a family, and I remember showing up there, seeing about maybe 200 kids from around the world, and just looking in this gymnasium before things had started. And I'm saying to myself, I wonder which of these kids will actually win this event. And I met some of your friends. I met Jambi.
Yeah, he was supposed to win that event.
And you introduced him to me. This is my Hungarian friend, Pop. And just then watching how you were making your progression through first day and then going to the second day, and before you know it, you're in the finals, and then when you won. That was very amazing. And you had said to me, Pop, I think this meditation is really helping me. Even leading up to that, because you had noticed it. And then we even talked about that for even years later. And sometimes you would sort of say, don't, Pop, leave me alone. When you wouldn't meditate, you didn't want to talk about it. But when you did, you would talk about that you were more prepared. So, yeah, clearly with your feedback, it became clear to me that was helpful to your progression. So that was, everything else I did also supported you. And so you say, what were the main things that I did? I don't think there's any one, but I think we've covered the various things.
Okay. So then was there ever a moment where you pushed and you should have backed off? Or, where you feel like you might have hurt via good intentions? Because that's something we see a lot with these parents. They're not doing this because they're bad people. I mean, they might be. You might be. But for the most part, it's all well-intentioned. They want their kid to succeed. They want their kid to do well. They want their kid to go to a good school. They want their kid to be the best. But they're pushing probably in an unproductive or negative way. Do you think there was any moment where you feel like your good intentions actually pulled us back?
Well, now that you asked me the question, with your fencing career, I can't really say that anything sticks out, but something does stick out with regards to your sister, with Camille. I remember Camille was very emotional frequently during her fencing bouts, and I remember I loved videoing both of you during your bouts. And you never know when someone's going to win or lose, and I want to capture, if you win, I want to capture your moments of glory. And I remember there was a tournament where Camille didn't want me to video, and I didn't respect her wishes. And I stepped back further away, but I still videoed. And then she saw, and she got really upset. So I think I crossed the boundary. I should have listened to her request and would have prevented that meltdown.
Yeah, I can see that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's true. The meditation aspect is something that I'm glad we agree on that. That's something that I feel gave me a leg up at one point, but then it stopped being about competing. It started being more about self-regulation and preparing just to be a human and to handle moments of stress and of challenge in life. And I've used it. I use it to manage my day-to-day existence. It's not about fencing anymore. It's about the way I approach life. So that was definitely the biggest impact for me.
I think you touched on a good point with the story about Camille, where, as a general rule, I think I'm not a parent yet, or that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But I think as a general rule, during competition, like maybe not without regulation, but the athlete should more or less be in charge, right? They sort of know, as you touched on, they need to deal with the loss themselves, and I think they know in the moment what they need themselves to be productive and compete well, or at least, as they get more experienced and more seasoned. So maybe not, without boundaries or anything, but I think that's a good thing to touch on is, just let them sort of take charge of that experience and let them guide that. And
Right. So I could have showed support by recognizing, by acknowledging requests and following through.
Or
she would have felt more comfortable.
Yeah.
Or you just be way more sneakier.
Yeah. But really, yeah, it's about, I think, recognizing that Camille and I respond differently to the same stimuli.
Right.
And that different athletes have different needs to reach that peak performance. And some of us really thrive in the attention and the spotlight, and others perform well in a different environment.
Well, and as a proud parent, I want to capture the moments of glory rather than the glorious moment happens and I miss the opportunity to capture it, so you can't watch it for years later. But there's got to be a balance, and I think I was trying to convince Camille, no, it should be okay. Instead, she's like, no, I don't want it, so it shouldn't happen. And it is her event. It wasn't my event. And I should have.
I think that's the key takeaway. Like, you're spending money and time on these athletes so that they can go and compete. And then the moment you make it about you, it changes the entire dynamic of the event. And then in the athlete's head, it's like, okay, well, then you should go fence if you want to do this so much, right? Like, and that's important. It's a big challenge because
by the way, I tried fencing.
Yeah, you did. We talked about it. You had a career. No, but really, it's like there's a balance. You're being supportive. You're doing all these things. You're trying to help, but I think noticing when it becomes counterproductive, and that wasn't a one-off occasion, as we know, and that's like it's a challenge. So my last question before I pass it back to Stephen real quick is, were there any moments that you pulled back where you feel like you should have pushed further on something, that you could have helped us more, where you felt like because of maybe adverse experiences like that with Camille, or me maybe, snapping about you asking if I'd meditated when I knew I hadn't, or something like that, were there any moments that you wished you had pushed for something more?
You're asking me off the cuff, and I hadn't really.
You don't need to have an answer.
But I don't think I really have an answer saying because it wasn't about me pushing. So I don't think so.
That's a good answer in and of itself.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
It shouldn't be about you pushing. It should be about the self-motivation of the athlete.
Absolutely. Especially in a sport like fencing.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions about fencing journey?
Yeah, well, we have one in here, and I know Ari's too uncomfortable to ask it himself because we would never stop giving him because we already do give him a lot of what was it like watching one of your kids become world champion and hold such a prestigious title, right? It's a significant life achievement for anyone in any activity, right? And all of a sudden, like you were saying, you're there looking at 200 kids, one of them's going to win. What was it like being the parent of that? And what was that like moving forward? Do you feel like that the approach changed in the season following, or?
Well, okay, so the event itself was very amazing, where, I think right like from the top 32s or so, I'm now messaging people and back home. And by the time the momentum built up and then everyone realized that, he's going to be in the finals, there was a whole group of people back here in the United States that my friends and coworkers and my employees were all watching. They all knew and they're tuned in. And even in my clinic, that office that we just opened up, at several offices, they were all streaming this on YouTube live. And the patients just had to wait, and they're all watching, and it was like this. And I have a friend who subsequently passed away, but he was going through chemotherapy at the time. He was in his chemotherapy suite, getting his chemotherapy, and had them put the thing on the computer for him to be able to watch. And it was Ken Plotkin, lifelong friend, and he got to share in the excitement as well. So that was really an amazing experience as a parent. And remembering how, the day before in the morning I said, I wonder who's going to win this thing, and then it turns out to be your son. So when your child accomplishes something like that, you develop a sense of admiration as well, because it's like, wow, my child can actually be the best. And I recognized that the circle around him, I mean, it's in the hotel. It was a nice venue where this was like a resort that we were staying at. And he had like a following wherever he was walking around. All these kids were like following around him, constantly talking and whatever. It was funny. So, but then even when we got back home, everyone wanted to talk to Ari. Everyone wanted to share in the success. And I remember one of my offices is up in the north part of Houston. So Ari came one day because my office wanted to, have a little celebration, and they brought balloons and everything. And he came to my office and gave him his balloons, and we had some cake or whatever. And then he went to the fencing club that's up in the Woodlands, so he went there.
Alliance Woodlands.
The Alliance up in the Woodlands. And all the fencers there were all like excited that Ari's going to be, because they all want to fence him. So he's lined up and they're all fencing one. So I dropped him off there and then went back to my office and then came back. But I remember then Ari, like, he's like, oh, wait, I forgot the balloons. We went back to get the balloons. And I remember, Maggie Lavender, one of my nurse practitioners, so happy, got pictures. They all wanted to get their pictures, their selfies with Ari. And they were recalling to him their experience watching him, across the world, live winning this. So, but then also the excitement from the schools. And now there's more of an interest in him for the recruitment process. And the local television did a little thing on the news. Even before the World Championship, there was something on the news. But then they did like a before and after. And that was fun, watching your son on local news.
That's awesome. That's really, no, I kind of putting myself in, like, imagining what this all looked like. And it's fun. It made me smile. It made me happy thinking about what.
It was a weird place for me, Stephen. As you know, I'm the butt of very many jokes. And all of a sudden, that was the first time in my life that I had done something that none of my peers had done. And it was really weird because it created this imbalance in the jokes.
Well, lo and behold, they just made new jokes.
Oh, yeah. The jokes just got even better and more ruthless. But still, it was this weird place to be in. And it was, all of a sudden to get that type of attention was a lot, I think, for a kid. And some people deal with it differently. Someone who's dealt with it better than I did, Nathaniel Wimmer. I think he stayed extremely humble. I don't think I managed it the same way. I think I let it go straight to the dome.
I remember then what followed. Then you became in juniors and going to the junior world championships. And you just didn't do that well.
Yeah.
You sort of blew it.
Yeah.
And you were, and who was I to sort of sit there and say, yeah, or you blew it. But, you knew yourself. But I think even your attitude going into it was more cavalier. And you weren't taking it as seriously. I think you were a little, I don't want to say axe to grind, but you were really out to prove yourself in the cadet year. You were way behind in points, and you were looking at some of the people that you were friends with at your fencing club, and they were ranked higher than you. And, I remember specifically you say, oh, Michael Popovici's doing so well. I beat him all the time in practice. But then the tables turned. But then you would go all the way internationally, and you would fizzle out.
Yeah.
And you'd get down on yourself. And I would sometimes say, did you meditate? And you'd say,
The answer was
no. Pop, no, don't talk to me about it.
But then when I did, maybe I would be less cavalier and more focused. So it's funny. It took many years to realize that maybe I should just stick to one. And I chose meditation versus not meditation. Thanks for asking that, Stephen. I never ask him about it. I haven't asked since I was a kid. This is the first time I got to hear an answer in a controlled setting.
It's a good time to do it.
Yeah. I guess because you are a sleep doctor. Well, I guess let's go back a little bit. Do you have any message to current fencing parents today that are going through this process with their kids of just all the things that you described? They're people of all different types of backgrounds going through a very similar process, gunning for similar things. Is there any, you've been giving advice and stories this whole time, but if you had to give any like targeted advice, do you want to do that now or no?
Well, I mean, be supportive of your child. Don't be too hard on them.
That's your camera.
Okay. All right. Well, you want to be supportive of your child. You don't want to be harsh on them if they don't get the top results. They know they didn't get the top results. You don't have to beat it into them. And they want to know that you love them regardless of the results. Because if it all becomes about the results, then there could be a lot of animosity, and if anything, it's not going to help them develop in the sport. I don't think they're going to do better because they were trying to satisfy the parent. I think they're going to do better because of the benefits of doing well. But I don't know that a punishment is really helpful. So, and I've seen parents get really upset at their children, years ago, at a tournament, and then if you would beat that child, I sort of feel bad. Well, they're getting punished because Ari just beat them, but you got to be supportive. So there was you had an issue with salt deficiencies and electrolyte deficiencies, and you have muscle spasms.
He doesn't know about April.
So just the muscle spasms were an issue, and that would sometimes hinder.
Yeah, he solved it. He has a system now. It never happens.
Yeah, never happens.
Except I heard it happen recently.
Yeah. Okay. So I could tell you.
But the thing is, so now that I'm thinking about it, me giving support, making sure that you have your electrolytes and bringing salt with us, and you'd run out and I'd have the stuff there, and trying to deal with some of your issues, that was one of them. And cramping was a real big one. There's some tournaments that you didn't win because you did great up until the point you started cramping, and like the semifinals or whatever.
Skill issue.
Yeah. Well, but anyhow, just to give some echoing of guidance, maybe the things we talked about to parents is just you don't want to be too harsh with them. It's not all about the results. It's about the maturation process that your child goes through by competing and being able to face your fears. No one wants to lose, but you still get up and you stand there and you do your best and you learn how to be focused. And you have to lose in order to be good. That's part of the process. And so you don't want it to be a punishing. The disappointment's going to be there naturally by the fact that you didn't win.
You got to lose to be good.
Yeah.
That was a great quote. Just clip that. That was great.
A lot of good clips in this one. I'm excited.
Yeah. What else we got, Steven?
We're getting into now. We wanted to switch to the professional angle.
Yeah.
So I
you're
think
a doctor.
You're good to intro this.
All
Better
right.
than me, at least.
So as we mentioned on his very short CV, this is a very accomplished doctor and happens to be one of the world-renowned experts in a field that's super trending right now, sleep. Plenty of sleep maxers out there, maybe some of you guys. I'm guilty of having touched some sleep maxing habits of myself, mouth tape being one of them. And we want to just talk about that with regards to your profession, your level of expertise in something that is closely tied to what we do, which is performing in sport and being athletes, right? So we just have a few questions. First one is more of a layup. It's easier to answer, I think. But you're a world-renowned sleep specialist. How much does sleep actually matter for an athlete's reaction time and recovery?
Well, it does matter. There have been some studies, and they've actually looked at that. So if you're sleep deprived, you're not going to function as well. We sleep for a reason, and that's you get restoration of your body, rejuvenation. So you want to maximize your total sleep. And if you're exercising and training, you may want to give yourself more than what's considered the normal amount of sleep, needing maybe more like 8 to 9 hours instead of 7 to 8. Your body needs to go through more restoration if you're really training really, really hard. And so it does make a difference.
Is that reasonable to ask of athletes though? Because the ones that are listening to this, because they're training, they're probably predisposed to getting less sleep because they have to train after school or after work, and then they have to get the eating and then the homework if they're students, and then they have to go to sleep and wake up the next morning anyways.
There lies the challenge.
Yeah.
And there lies the opportunity to improve your efficiency to be able to achieve those great goals. Yeah. And that's where something like meditation could actually help you. If you can transition from going from one task to the next quickly, that helps you. Because some people, they got to unwind. It takes them a long time before they can get focused. If you could reduce that time, then you're going to be able to increase your efficiency. But if you're going to become sleep deprived, you really want to not be sleep deprived before competition. So then when you talk about international competitions, that becomes even more of a challenge. How do you deal with that when you're traveling over, across the pond? Now you're in Europe, and you're hours ahead, and you got to get to sleep because you got to get up the next morning because your tournament starts at 8 and you got to be there like 7 or whatever, and your body feels like it's let's say 8 o'clock at night, but it might be 11, 12, at midnight in Europe.
Do you have any tips?
So, yeah, you can really, if you can try to adjust a few days beforehand, because if you look at core body temperature and how quickly you can switch, if that core body temperature is sort of the basic measure of your circadian rhythm, all right? And you can only really shift it at maximum 2 hours per day, all right? So if you could start 2 days beforehand, if you're going to be at a place where you're going to have, let's say, 4-hour difference in time zone, then you're going to be at an advantage. You can't, you can't force yourself to fall asleep, but you can force yourself to wake up. So you want to start waking up earlier and then normally you're awake for 16 hours, and then you go to sleep, and then you sleep for 8 hours. That's a 24-hour day. So you may want to, depending on how you have to, there's a longer discussion, maybe you could have another episode with people
just about sleep,
but I would also include breathing with that, sleep and breathing. But you want to start advancing beforehand, and forcing yourself to wake up earlier so you can get to bed earlier. And then in terms of sleep aids, melatonin is one thing that's safe that you could take. There are other short-acting medications that I wouldn't recommend for athletes, especially if they're going to do any kind of drug testing. But things
so don't recommend them.
There are things that are metabolized quickly though and are out of the system that even astronauts would take on the space shuttle. But sleep is important, and you don't want to stay up late and sacrifice your sleep the night before a tournament. And it's hard to. That's where meditation can actually help. If you could settle yourself down, you're more apt to fall off to sleep, because the more roused you are and more on sympathetic drive you are, the harder it is to actually fall asleep. And body temperature is important too. Cool environment. Taking a hot bath right before you go to bed. Try to be submerged in a bath and raise your core body temperature, and then let the room be cool. Because as your body temperature drops, that enhances the drowsiness response.
Good to know.
Oh, that's a good one.
I didn't know that one. We could have just said that. That's a great one.
I like that.
All right, Steven, you got more?
Side question.
We're almost done.
Oh, I'll save my side question for after.
No, do the side question.
Side question. In my best season thus far, I did this thing where I didn't sleep a lot during college. It was not the smartest time in my life, and now that I'm older, I feel a difference. But before competitions, I wouldn't sleep a lot. And so there was one competition where I did sleep 9 hours, and I woke up feeling really rested, and I felt really slow, and I lost pretty early. So I went, all right, we're not doing that. And I entered what I like to call feral mode, where I got between 4 and 5 hours of sleep, and I woke up a little afraid and a little shaky. And that seemed to be optimal performance for a while. Why did that work, and why was that a bad idea?
Well, infinite cortisol.
Well, obviously there's a lot of individual variation, but in general, your peak performance is typically going to be in the afternoon. And when you wake up, especially if you had, was out of curiosity, was that tournament overseas?
It was all of them. It was every tournament that season. I aimed for 4.5 to 5 hours.
No,
of sleep.
but
No, it was the U.S. tournament.
It was the U.S. tournament.
Yeah.
But if you wake up and you should have most of your slow wave sleep in the beginning of the night. But if someone is not having a normal, what we call sleep hygiene, they may wake up with slow wave sleep at the early hours of the morning, which is not typical. But if that happens, you're going to have what we call sort of like sleep drunkenness. When you wake up out of slow wave sleep, it's hard for your brain to really transition to become real active. But you said you sort of woke up and it was you were in this fog. So, sometimes when people do get too much sleep, that can happen. But everyone needs to figure out what is their optimal sleep requirement. And the best way to determine that is whether they are sleepy during the day when they're sitting still, calm, quiet, and relaxed. Because in the middle of the day, if you're sitting relaxed, calm, and quiet, and you get drowsy, try to read something, and you fall asleep, that means you're not getting enough sleep, or your sleep is deficient. There's something lowering the efficiency of your sleep. But if you can sit calm, quiet, and relaxed without stimulants, without caffeine in the middle of the day, then whatever sleep you're getting is adequate for you. And for some people, that's going to be 7 hours. Some people, it's going to be 9 hours. The average would be 7.5 to 8 hours. But you talked about having those instances where you get 4 or 5 hours sleep and your performance is better. If that is good for you, you've noticed that.
No, it was bad. It's not good.
Okay.
He just had one good season with it.
One season, but it was more like that, like sleep deprivation, like shaky. Like I was wired and ready to go because
But you could have been wired and ready to go without that.
Yeah.
If you just learn more control over your autonomic nervous system, you could be in the fight and flight mode, and then you could be more in the relaxed mode on command.
That makes sense. Yeah. Sleep has been much more important to me since graduating college. So we see a lot of social media trends with like sleep maxing, like Ari mentioned, mouth taping. Okay. 30 seconds overhyped or...
Well, there's a part of a bigger picture. It's best to breathe through your nose. Nasal respiration is optimal respiration. If you open up your mouth, think of it as rescue breathing. But you may be doing it because of a deficiency. You may have a nasal airway that's deficient, or you may just have a smaller mouth. So to force someone to mouth tape may not be a good thing, but once we're trying to improve overall breathing, then taping the mouth can be beneficial because when your jaw's like this, is better when it's retracted and you're asleep, then your airway could be obstructed. So there is an advantage, but there's downsides for people that have nasal obstruction.
So basically what we're hearing you say is mouth tape is good, but only if you know that your airway is not obstructed up here first.
Right.
So get checked out and then apply the mouth tape if you're cleared.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right.
Go for it.
No, you get the last one.
I get the last one?
Yeah.
What's one free habit that beats every $200 sleep aid out there?
One, consistency. Good sleep hygiene. I took a lot of things and simplified it into one term, sleep hygiene.
But consistency is good too. Like once you find the pattern, actually people will try things for short amounts of time and then give up, right? Mm-hmm. But you actually have to tweak and refine something over a long period of time, just like life.
Meditation.
Okay. That's good. That's a great answer. I know you don't really frequent this podcast very much, but Steven and I have a final segment that we do with every single guest. And because you're on direct elimination, you got to play the game. So you've watched a lot of fencing. You've even fenced before. You know that getting a single light is a lot harder than getting a double light. In order to get that single light, you have to have commitment, decisiveness, fast reaction time. You have to be ready, and you have to commit. So we call this last segment One Light Answers because it forces you to really commit to the first thing that comes through your head.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. How do I acknowledge? Okay. I'm ready.
You just answer the question.
Okay.
Take us away, Stephen.
Who are your two favorite fencers of all time?
Jimmy Moody
That's one.
and Ari Simmons.
Hey, Jimmy, you made it. All right.
Beat Camille.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't get it. He crossed Camille. That's okay.
Sorry. You said photographers, I would have said Camille.
There we go.
All right,
there
all
it
right.
is.
What was the favorite city you went to for fencing?
Estonia.
That's a country.
Well, no.
What's your favorite city?
Tallinn.
Tallinn?
Yeah.
All right. We'll ask it again.
Okay.
We don't want to make you look bad. What was your favorite city you went to for fencing?
Tallinn, Estonia.
Oh, yeah. That was a cool
You
place.
should say why.
Why?
Because we had a great party afterwards.
That's true. That's true. Speaking of Russian speakers, our friend from Belarus. Anyways,
Was there anything you brought along to competitions back in the day that you probably shouldn't have?
A drone.
all right.
Cameras.
Yeah. Who is the hardest bout that you ever fenced?
Anna Van Broomen.
Hey, let's go.
Who do you think right now is a better sleeper, Ari or Camille?
Camille.
All right. Why?
She sleeps more.
Yeah, that's true. Fair. Okay. Next. Right now, if you had to fence any other parent from the original Alliance Fencing Academy parent class, who do you think you could beat right now?
Oh gosh. Irina.
Okay. Do you have any?
No, that was it.
That's great.
That was
That's the
great.
final
We should have done that one. One final question that we ask all of our guests.
Okay.
What is your favorite piece of Prieur equipment?
Oh, the mask.
Hey, the mask.
Fan of the classics.
Well, Pop, you survived. You did a wonderful job. I think that parents that are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube hopefully have a lot of things to take away because they're either pushing their kids already in productive ways or hopefully you gave them some ideas of how they could support them better. And in general, I just want to say thank you live in front of everyone. You set me up to succeed. You set Camille up to succeed. You and Mom did a great job as parents. And I think it's shown by, by everything. And I see it every day of my life. And the work that you put in to make sure that we ended up being good people, we really put forth and tried to pass along to other people. So thank you. And thanks for coming on Direct Elimination.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, to parent me anytime.
No, I'll echo what Ari said. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Thank you for recounting all those stories. Thank you for raising two wonderful kids, and thank you for being an absolute pillar in the fencing community.
At least from our generation.
Yeah.
You don't go to tournaments anymore, so the youngins don't know.
Yeah.
But our generation, they knew Jerry Simmons. And
It really wouldn't have been the same without you. It wouldn't have been the same without Ari. And so thank you for everything you've done along the way. You've done an amazing job. And I hope that this podcast will serve as an example for people who are going through that journey right now themselves.
Yeah. And last thing to bring up, if any of you or anyone you know has issues with sleeping, you can always find a sleep doctor near you. You can also go on YouTube, check out my Jerry Simmons, Dr. Gerald Simmons TED Talk.
It'd be under Gerald with a J.
Gerald with a J. There's
Gerald
a
Simmons.
TEDx talk discussing sleep and its importance, and it would be very educational for you to go and check it out. Or you can go to his website, csma.clinic, and check him out there. And if you have any questions about his parenting in particular, or just what it's like being a fencing parent, you want to pick his brain, reach out to us and we'll gladly get you in touch.
Thanks for the endorsement.
Yeah. No, thanks, Pop. Steven and I at Direct Elimination would just like to thank Pure USA for bringing this podcast to life with us. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and we definitely wouldn't be able to look as good as we do when we're on the strip. So thank you so much for supporting our project, and we'll keep making more.
You guys come to this podcast for genuine, unfiltered, unbiased opinions on fencing in the game. And Ari and I seek to deliver that. That's why we would never, ever try to sway you to buy certain equipment or purchase things from a certain brand. That's just not who we are. However, if you wanted, you can shop Pure USA anytime. Link in our bio.
See, I'm not that suave of a guy, but when I'm wearing my Pure mask, I sure do feel like one. By Pure USA.
Get grippy with Edge.